Hey, Deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, The Single Life. Let's watch.
What's going on, Natalie?
Oh my God. I don't know. I really like her a lot. And so I decided, I stuck with her. But after sex, he left.
Okay, so we're learning that they had a good date and she really likes him. They had sex and she's sort of saying that maybe she's not happy that he left. I'm guessing he had to work or something like that. So I don't know. I hope the best for her either way. In all likelihood, this relationship isn't going to work out long term because most dating relationships don't. Statistically, if I were to make a bet, I wouldn't bet that this relationship I wouldn't put my money down on this relationship still existing in 10 years. But that doesn't mean that she can't have a fulfilling time with this relationship. But I'm terrified that she's going to idealize. She's going to pour all of her attachment needs into him. She's going to somewhat delusionally believe things about the relationship that other people without her relational injuries and traumas would believe. Meaning, you've heard me talk about this before. My hypothesis about her is that she was significantly relationally traumatized when she was young, giving her a tremendous need for attachment that might not have ever really been met, and or schemas and experiences regarding abandonment and betrayal, and a belief that that's always going to happen, but a hope that that it won't happen again. And when she meets him, it's a lot of hopes and dreams get poured into it. The analogy that I came up with years ago was, if you are in the desert and there's no water and you're thirsty and you haven't had a bite to eat or a glass of water, any amount of water, in days, and you see an oasis, or you think you see something in the distance, and you need it to be water or food or civilization or help or something, right? So you're crawling through the sand dunes and you see something and you just get elated that this is my saving moment. This is what's going to save my life. Maybe I just get a thimble of water over there, and you start running and you're like, it's going to be it. And then you get there and it's either not it, or you get there and it's a puddle of water, but it's disgusting. It's got a bunch of crap in it or something. And then you're crestfallen, right? So that's what it feels like to have a life of abandonment traumas, particularly, when you start out. Because we're born into the world with a desperate need for attachment and love and acceptance and validation and attunement. And when we don't get it, it's like crawling through the desert constantly, so you would be completely focused on water if you were in that situation, right? You wouldn't be able to think about anything else. And you'd be always on the lookout. Where is it? And then you'd see a possible sign and you'd get so happy. You'd be like, yes, this is it. Because you need it to be that. You need it to be water. And then when you put all your effort and you're completely focused on getting to that oasis, and it's in fact not water or not safe, then you're devastated, right? It's the worst experience of all time. Whereas if you have been given enough water in your life and you've never had to go for a long period of time without any water, and you're say walking through the desert, but you have a canteen and a camel at your side with a giant tank of water, and you see what looks to be maybe an oasis in the distance, you're just like, well, maybe that's an oasis, maybe it's not. I don't care, And if it is an oasis, then great. I can fill up on my canteen. But if it's not an oasis, that's okay, because I know I will eventually come across another oasis, or I'll reach a civilization, because that's always the way it's worked out for me. Plus, I have a map to get there, I guess, if we really want to extend the metaphor. So I'm worried that she is now running towards the oasis, but she doesn't know if water is there. And at the first sign that there isn't water there, she will be devastated and might reject a good relationship, or a burgeoning, at least good enough relationship, because when she's crestfallen like that, she will lash out. So I don't know. I'm just terrified. And mostly for him, I'm guessing he'll recover either way, but I'm mostly terrified about her. We saw her in that first season crumbled on her bed in the fetal position, crying and crying and sobbing and sobbing and sobbing because Mike had indicated he might not want to get pregnant that week. He was saying, I want to get pregnant eventually, soon, in fact, just not right now. And that felt like that was that indication, right? It's the oasis is out there. Mike is the oasis, and any sign that it's not an oasis is devastating. And then the crumbling, and then the attacking, and then the isolating, and then more pain and more reasons to not trust other people. Anyway, I'm just terrified for her.
I was in that moment in his arms, and I forgot how is my name, you know.
That good, huh?
But it's not the way I expected it to be. I wanted him to stay with me, kiss me, touch me, you know, share tenderness together.
Right. Now, who knows? Maybe he was a jerk face when he left. Given his demeanor previously on camera, I'm guessing it wasn't that way. I'm guessing that he was very tender and said, I have to go. I have things to do today. And I don't think she has a job, so she's just sitting there by herself, and she doesn't know anyone else in LA, I don't think. And so she's even more likely to only focus on him and want to spend all her time with him. And any sign that he is not 110 billion% with her and stable and safe is hurtful, and she will focus on that. Again, when you're the oasis, you haven't had any water for a week, and you see what you think to be an oasis, and someone comes along and asks you to do something else, or there's something else to pay attention to, like, I don't know, you have ants crawling up your leg, you're probably not going to pay attention to that because you're like, never mind about the ants, I got to get to that oasis. And so there's not much room for any other thing aside from that preoccupied focus on attaining attunement and togetherness and full attachment with another person. So we're seeing some signs of that. And I want to be clear that there's a middle path. So let's say that it does work out with him and they are together in 10 years, and this is just normal bumps in the road in the beginning of a relationship. Okay, but what if it goes normally and the relationship just kind of fizzles out over time, or she gets triggered and pushes him away or something like that? That would be pretty devastating. There's another road, which is that she's able to, probably with therapy, to navigate this relationship as it is. Whether it works out or not, she can still experience it with an understanding that it might not work out. She's hoping it will, but with some understanding it might not, and that doesn't reflect on who she is. It's just dating. That's just how dating is. So I'm not saying that she's doomed either way, but with therapy, and maybe she will, maybe, because this is something just inherent about a lot of dating experiences. It's like you just have to live in the moment to some extent. So she could be living in the moment of just, oh, that was great. What a great date last night when we had sex and that was nice. I wonder what the future. No, don't think about the future. Who knows about the future? I'm just going to live in the moment. I'm in LA. Let's have some fun. And when we see each other again next time, we'll see what happens, and I'll live in that moment. And then when that moment is over, I'll live in another moment. Being in the present, as Yoda told Luke.
Like he's like, I need to go. Practically, like, we had sex and he stand up and left, and I was like,
right. I don't know. Maybe he did that, but she said practically, like, we had sex and he stood up and left. I'm guessing that is not what happened. Given her track record, I'm just going to take a guess and say that it was much different than that. If he were able to tell a story, or if we had the video of him leaving, it would have been much different. So that's how it felt to her, though. And that's how she's narrativizing it, which is worrisome, because if she's punishing herself. She's imagining something that happened that probably did not happen, and that's painting a picture of that says she's not worth it. That says she can't trust him. And even though there's another way of looking at it, right? So I don't know. I wasn't there, but I'm just going to take a guess and say that there's that. But also, she risks being overly upset and then attack him, and then he will stand up and leave. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's already starting. It's like so fast the way that it happens for her, because I think her attachment schemas are really severe and entrenched, highly reactive.
I mean, this is so common situation, you know. You fall for guy, you don't know if he falls back for you, and you just try to build something with him, like, you know, blindly. So yeah, we see how he looks at me after. Because Josh invited me to meet his friends today.
So another issue that's common to preoccupied people in the beginning of a relationship is that, just using the oasis metaphor, is you focus on the metaphor or you focus on the oasis, and the oasis is all good because you imagine in your mind that it must have pristine, crystal clear water because you believe it's your only chance. And so you will idealize and see it as perfect, as all good, right? Because you need it to be that way. And it's also a throwback to an earlier stage in life when you're 1-2 years old and you don't have a gray zone when you're looking at your caregivers. They're all good or they're all bad. There's no gray zone. And she just essentially said something along those lines. She's like, she's basically saying she's fallen in love with him and she is 100% into him, but she doesn't know if he's into her yet, because I think he doesn't have those kinds of schemas, and thus he's more rational about this because I think they've had 2 dates. So how in the world would he know if they're a good match or not? So there's no question mark in her head as to whether or not she really does love him or want to be with him. That's just a foregone conclusion. It's like, that question has been answered. He's all good. All I want is him. I'm going to stop evaluating things. I'm going to stop scrutinizing things. I'm going to stop asking questions. I'm all in because of the way it feels and how desperate I am for that kind of closeness. And by the way, if you want to see another version of love bombing, what she is doing in my definition that I use with my clients, she's actually doing a version of love bombing. I don't know if he's susceptible to it. I don't really know much about him at all. He doesn't seem very susceptible to that sort of thing. But love bombing, there are 2 main types. One is the psychopathic, sadistic, Machiavellian type, meaning that the individual knows they're love bombing, or the organization like a cult or a religious group or a business or something. These organizations or these individuals know that to manipulate someone, they can love bomb. They can fake how much they love someone, how great they see the other, you're the best, I love you so much, and we're the best, and I just need you so much, and this thing, that's psychopathic love bombing. That's usually the way people describe it, regardless of what type it is. They'll usually assume that it's Machiavellian, meaning that it's premeditated and voluntary. But most love bombing, in my experience, is this kind, which is involuntary or unconscious. The individual actually believes that they love the person and they only see the good in the other person. So when you have these kinds of attachment injuries, which I don't know if she has, but she exhibits signs of, when you match up with someone, you see them as all good and you shower them with compliments because you feel really positive about the person because, again, all good, all bad, split. And you're so desperate for the person, you're like, oh my God, I've never felt this way before. I'm so in love with you. I think about you all the time. We're the best together. I'm having so many emotions. And when you're the recipient of that, it can feel overwhelmingly positive to you because someone is so into you and they see you in such a good light. But what is around the corner is her getting triggered and switching to all bad, and then devaluing him and attacking him. And so that's often when people, especially when you start to see a pattern, you start to wonder, what's going on here? It feels like the Natalies of the world are doing it on purpose. Like, why are you doing this? Like, 1 week I'm all good and you love me, and then another week you hate me and I'm the worst person on the planet. So the second must be the real you, and the first one where you're loving me and showering me with compliments, that must be a manipulation, right? That's typically the conclusion that people will make. Typically, in this kind of love bombing, both are them, but they're just 2 different versions of them, 2 different modes of them. And one, they see you as very positive, and the next one, they see you as very negative. And this is a throwback to an early developmental phase that for some people they never really graduate out of, especially when it comes to close attachments. Infants, toddlers, young children will, as I was saying earlier, all good, all bad, they're caregivers, and really everyone, including themselves. And you will see evidence of this when your kid is just loving you. You're the best. You're just the most wonderful thing. You're giving them food. You're giving them comfort. You're entertaining. Your facial expressions are the best. Everything about you is wonderful. And then you do something that aggravates them, like you say it's time for a nap, or you're not going to give them that extra cookie, or you pay attention to one of your other kids or something. And the kid will turn on you and they will see you as all bad because they can't see the two together in the same person. And one way of talking about that in terms of psychoanalytic object relations theory is actually the child sees the parent as two distinct creatures. There's the all good parent and the all bad parent, and those are two different people. The child can't integrate those two people. They don't have a gray zone, so they actually will almost think of you as a different, like when you start to frustrate them, they're like, oh, this is that other parent that frustrates me, because they can't really think in a way that encompasses the entire human being yet. And over time, they will be able to develop that if the attachment field is sufficient and healthy, and lack of trauma and lots of attunement, that kind of thing. So individuals with these kinds of schemas and experiences will exhibit that in their adult relationships. And if you're the recipient of that, it will feel manipulative, because for you, you're desperate for closeness too. For him, I don't know his situation, but I'm going to take a guess and say that Natalie makes him feel really good, because Natalie's really into him. Lots of eye contact, lots of paying attention to him. He's probably had his fair share of attachment injuries as well. He doesn't exhibit it, but sometimes people who don't exhibit it have it a lot. They've had a lot of those experiences in his past. And so when the Natalies of the world are loving you and complimenting you and thinking about you all the time, and you're the best, and they're just so invested, it feels very safe. It feels very secure. It feels very good. That's what we're looking for when we're dating. That's what he's looking for. He's looking for someone that loves him, that needs him to some extent, depends on him, mutual dependence, this kind of thing. Closeness, attention, compliments, the whole thing, right? So when that's happening, you open up and you're like, oh, someone loves me. But there are strings attached, of course, because if you trigger them and you step on a landmine regarding their personality, then they turn on you and you've opened yourself up, and then they start attacking you, and you're, and depending on the situation, if that perpetuates, it can actually turn into an abusive cycle where the love bomber will vacillate between treating you as all good and all bad. And so it can be very seductive, because when you're being treated all bad, you're like, how do we get back to the all good? And then sometimes you will get back to the all good. They'll treat you all good. Then you trigger them and you're all, and then it just goes around and around. And again, for the type that I'm talking about right now, this abusive love bomber is not doing it on purpose. They're reacting from their attachment injury and their schemas. That doesn't make it okay. It just explains it. Abuse is abuse is abuse. Doesn't matter where it comes from. It's still victimization. It's still harm to the individual. Alrighty then. That does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.